Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 80. Hey, therapist, this is take 3 from me on your last podcast episode for the Structured Rest series. And this is really how I think about burnout recovery. So I'm putting these all together for you. So it's starting back at 74, where I did an intro, and then I talked about kind of each phase of structured rest. And so I'm going to do a recap of that and then also add in a little spices to it and preview my things that are coming as well in the last part of summer, as well as into the fall and beyond. I'm going to give you the full kind of thoughts about this work. And it really comes from, I think, reflections from my own burnout primarily, but also, deeply rooted in myself when I was an EMDR therapist and also a certified brain injury specialist, and my work with brain injury survivors. And I continue to work in neuropsychological work. I currently work in schools with kids who have different brains. That's my favorite way of talking about how brains show up. We all show up differently with how our brain works. Sometimes that includes a diagnosis, but sometimes it's just a different way of thinking. And I think that can be a positive thing. And sometimes people are attached to diagnosis. I'm talking to a therapist, about labels and sometimes how people like or don't like to use them. So I think when I thought through burnout recovery, I don't even like the word burnout recovery, and I don't like burnout prevention. I like making stuff up that's my own, right? Why I don't like burnout prevention is that it kind of puts the onus on the therapist or on the person who is in burnout, that they are the person that needs to prevent it when it's a systems problem. So many of you know that we are in a dysfunctional system in the United States in the world of mental health. And I don't think that the US, where I am, is alone in that. I've heard from many therapists across the globe that the US has their own flavor of dysfunction in systems, but it does show up in other cultures and in other places in the world. Burnout prevention doesn't work for me either. Burnout recovery, I think, is better. I think many therapists think they need burnout prevention, which is stress management. And this is anyone in burnout. So if you have found this podcast and you're not a therapist, welcome. I welcome you in, whoever you are, whatever burnout you have, wherever it came from. I think many of us need burnout recovery because we are in chronic depletion. And so burnout recovery speaks to those who have been in chronic depletion from being burnt out, from your nervous system being depleted for a very, very long time. And you are now in shutdown, or you have been in sympathetic hypervigilance. That's a sympathetic nervous system. That is the part of our nervous system that jacks us up to make sure that we don't die. If like a tiger is running after us, we're going to be safe, right? It has a purpose. It's doing its job. It's telling your body's been telling you for a while, we are not safe here. Simple. Simple, simple. You might hear a child chattering in the background, by the way. It's hard for me to focus on this when my kids are playing video games, which they're yelling often. So there's that. But we're all good here. Everyone's safe as I'm talking about nervous systems. Real life, real life. I'm not in a perfect podcast studio. Not yet. Maybe one day. Who knows? Okay. So burnout recovery doesn't work for me either because it implies that it's a one-time fix. And I find that we need to think about it's a cycle, right? There are times where I've been burnout. And this last bout of burnout, I kind of, felt guilty in some ways, like, oh, I should have been able to see the signs and whatever. I don't, and I kind of liken that to recovery from substances, right? I worked in that world for quite some time in my training, and before that, my mom has been in the program and been in AA for much of her life, and openly, everyone in our family knows that. And it's not like anyone in the AA program will tell you, "I am recovered." No, 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 no. I think they would be like, no, you're in recovery because it's active. And so that is why also the actions associated in the things that we need to do if we've been burned out are active. They need to be a cycle. It is a return to things that are important to come back to. Because, of course, we don't want to face nervous system depletion again. We don't want to face feeling like we can't do our life again. But is it possible that we could get there again? Sure. Just like it's possible for someone who hasn't had a drink of alcohol to drink after 30 years. So, if they are not doing the things to take care of their own sobriety, to reach out to people, all the things and the behaviors that are associated with recovery are essential. And so, that's why we need to think about this as a return, as a rhythm, as a cycle of things that we just do because they're good for us. And just like this recovery metaphor for substance abuse recovery and burnout recovery, I think the parallels there are really helpful to think about. I think people in recovery, even 30 years after they have had their last drink of alcohol, they continue to need to have a sponsor. They continue to need to go to meetings. And so I think for the person, including myself, who is still in process, is still recovering from my burnout, is still figuring it out. If I had recovered, if I told you that we're going to go from, burnout to breakthrough, which I just want to like internally vomit a little bit when I hear those kinds of phrases, like burnout to all out. That's another marketing one that I see sometimes. And I'm like, no, we don't want to go all out. All right, so let's just go over the framework. So, what I talked about first was really we need to release things that are too heavy, that aren't working at all. So, that means a lot of letting go of things. And I think early on when I had reached full stop burnout, it felt like I was constantly saying no to everything. And it didn't feel great. Not at all. But it was necessary, right? It's necessary that if we've taken on too much in our lives, that means we need to constantly release things. So that's why this first phase of structured rest is release. And in there, I talked with you about doing a brain dump, doing a weekly cadence, a daily cadence of looking at what is in the brain scroll. Let's get everything out, put it down, schedule the things that have to happen, and delete, delegate, or delay anything that I don't have to do. And I think it's not just for burnout, it's just for life because life is coming at us so fast. And we really have to have this mindset of constantly pruning. I had this example. Did I talk about it on the podcast or maybe in the newsletter? I don't know which one. Or maybe it was in a coaching call with a therapist. But I have this part of my garden. If I've repeated this on the podcast, it's okay. We're just going to do it again. So I have this garden bed where I have tiger lilies and I don't want them to grow there. I've been pulling them out of this flower bed for 10 years. And guess what? This year, they continue to pop up. I need to take a picture and put it on the interweb somewhere. If I don't regularly, in the fall and in the spring, try to attack those tiger lilies early, they come up with a vengeance. They take over that flower bed. And I don't have the things planted there, like they get choked out. So the things that I actually want to grow, that I want to see in there, aren't possible. And that is my metaphor for pruning and for putting the things in that we want to see and constantly tending to the things that we want. So, in that first part, I need to get rid of those tiger lilies every single year. And really, I have to seasonally prune, take away, dig stuff up out of that damn bed of tiger lilies to have it look nice. And I really think of this process of regularly tending reduces our cognitive burnout. I'm going back to real life now, not just a flower bed, where we step out of constantly feeling like we're having a fire hose of constant input. And I didn't talk about this so much on this series, but previously I have talked about your phone. I was just listening this week to Cal Newport talk a little bit about how women actually tend to struggle more with phone addiction as opposed to men because of fears of social isolation. So, fears of like not responding to text messages, for example. Let's say you're planning play dates. I have to do this with my children because they are in that in between phase where I'm still planning their play dates for them with the parents, and they aren't doing that themselves yet. They're not planning their own social calendars. And so, if I'm not responding to that, while that might be good activity things to do, it also really gets me into my phone, that I'm checking my email, that I might be going into social. I have all social apps deleted from my phone now, but it is the ping that gets me into my phone, and then it's hard to get myself out. So I think thinking through your phone here in this release section, what in my phone do I need to release? Do I need to delete? Do I need to put a pause on? And one huge concept that I take out of Cal Newport's work is plugging my phone in, putting my phone, doing what he calls the phone for your method, like putting your phone in the kitchen, putting your phone away from you and not having your phone on your body, on your person that is like the constant companion that carries without through your whole day. So if you're listening to this podcast, put an earbud in, put it in the foyer, and then walk around with me. That's fine. Um, and I don't have ads, which is great because I'm self-sponsored, and I do this mostly out of my love for you, honestly, because it's not a huge monetary gain at the present moment. But you don't have to pause a podcast too much because there's not many interruptions at all. So there you are. So one is release. It's really deleting, doing that pruning, doing your brain dumps, getting everything out, and really taking the things that you don't need. Big piece of that in modern life is reducing digital noise, especially for women. Number two is regulating your nervous system. And I think putting in those things that you know are going to be regulating and thinking through what are the different ones you want to put in. And so we often hear from our doctors that sleep, nutrition, and movement are those pillars of health. Also, the research really tells us that connection, and the research on connection is talked about it a whole ton on this podcast. Many episodes about friendships. That therapist you need a friend episode that I did on episode 60. So go back and listen to that one. And I talk about connection and why we actually don't have as many friendships now and why we need to plan it. So, part of putting the things in, we know we need more connection. I think probably everyone who's listening to this podcast, unless you are a super extrovert like my brother, you probably need to do it like I do. You need to think about it intentionally. So that is one rhythm we have to put into place that often we don't think through from a traditional health lens of needing to put in connection as part of regulating our system. And I think all that polyvagal research and theory tells us that co-regulation really helps us get into that rest and digest system. And I think with regulating your system, also thinking about margin. Oftentimes, humans are very bad at predicting how long things will take. We think, oh, yeah, I can do those 7 sessions and then get all my notes done and then call back that person that needs a consult call and also figure out that insurance payment. And then I can plan my kids' play dates. No, we can't do all that in 8 hours. We just cannot do that. So, of course, we're overloaded, we're overtaxed, and we need to be better at predicting how much time we need. We know how long a therapy session takes, right? We can do that. We can do that calculation. But maybe for like a longer project, like a marketing project or doing your website, plan to put in your calendar twice the amount of time than you think it's going to take. And maybe that is a good rule of thumb to think about. So planning that intentional margin of I think it's going to take 2 hours, so I'm going to schedule 4 hours for this thing that I'm not sure of how long it's going to take. I recently got a new car and I'm cleaning out my old car and I was like, "Oh, it's going to take like an hour, hour and a half." I was working on that car for a solid 2.5, 3 hours yesterday, and I still need to take it again to get it vacuumed out. It is disgusting. It's the car I had when my kids were little. Oh my gosh, I told my husband, "I you have you can tell me if the car is getting funky because I need full accountability on keeping my new car that is beautiful clean." I don't even know how the old car got as disgusting as it's gotten. It's embarrassing, y'all. Anyways, give yourself more margin. Things take way longer than we think, and we are horrible at predicting how long it actually takes. So, white spaces in calendars, scheduling time that you don't have to do anything. That's radical. Like nothing time. Just maybe I'm going to watch a random show on HGTV or putter around my garden or maybe I do have that extra time to learn pickleball because I've been talking about it a lot lately. I played on the cruise ship. I went on a cruise and played pickleball on the cruise ship. It's a great thing to learn, especially when you're on a moving surface. I recommend it. So, yeah, thinking of things that you can just be spontaneous about sometimes. Regulating your system and thinking through those different things that you want to put in connection. If connection and sleep, I would say start with that and then think about movement that would support you. If anyone needs some advice on what movement to start, I say start with walking. So maybe start with a 10-minute a day gentle walking and then inch that up and see how that feels. See if you can do more or want to do more. And also, some things might be regulating for some people that aren't regulating for other people. So, if that's going to a meditation class or going to some like a yin yoga class that's going to be more breathing, that might be the nervous system reset that someone needs. And for others, it may not be as regulating. Maybe walking the dog outside in nature might be a great thing to do, something that I find really regulating for me. So, think through what is going to be that thing that you're going to get the most nervous system benefit from in your week and plan that one thing. I'm big on planning like what is one thing I can do for my sleep? What is one nutritious meal I can plan? One one way to move my body this week. One time of connection with a friend. Think through the one and then see if you can start to stack a habit. And my third part of the framework is returning to rhythm. So coming back to daily, weekly, and seasonal sabbatical practices that are going to help us reinforce the rest that we need. So, I talked about this on the last podcast episode on 79, where we really, there's a death of the sabbatical. We really have to fight for the rest that is our birthright. We are allowed to take naps. We're allowed to take a break for lunch. If there's anything simple you can do, it's actually sit down and eat your meal at a table without a device. It takes literally 10 minutes, guys. Literally takes 10 minutes to eat, and you have the time to do it. So I talked about sad salads in front of the desk that we continue to do, but thinking through, I really need to have some practices where I'm telling my body, you're actually safe right now. We have time to eat. We have time to drink a warm beverage. During the week, I have time to sit with a friend and eat a meal. I think we've gotten into the pace of chronic overwork due to modern life and due to the advent of the phone, where work is literally traveling with us all the time. So, putting in these rhythms, whether it be your lunch, a daily walk, seasonal practices of I am taking 2 weeks off where I am not doing any work at all, structures that are going to honor your body and your life. And also thinking through maybe there's a time where you come back to yourself, you know? Part of that rhythm is a reflection for yourself, a daily, a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual reflection. And to think of rest as a rhythm that we live by, not something that we have to earn. So a lot of times I think in our modern day culture, we think we have to be earning our rest and not, you can rest. You can take a nap if you need to. You can take the weekend off and not work. So I hope this has been helpful. This series has been helpful to you to build a framework for those who are in burnout, who have struggled with burnout across their careers, who keep coming back to it and haven't found a way to work sustainably. This is something that I keep coming back to and I keep working through. I continue to be recovering from my burnout. And I hope you found this helpful. Next month, I am going to have a little bit of an in between time in August where I'm talking about kind of some seasonable rhythms that therapists experience, like the lull in therapy and the upcoming ramp up that typically happens in practice where people come back to therapy and things get busy and how to manage that busyness for yourself. So look forward to that. I'm going to be talking about my practice closure plan, which is coming out in early fall, and more about a group in later fall as the weeks and months continue. So I hope you found this series helpful. Reach out to me if something really hit. I'd love to know what you enjoyed about this episode. You can do that best by joining my therapist pen pal list. That's where I send you different things than just on the podcast. I have a section there where I talk about kind of a rhythm of movement that I do. I teach fitness and yoga-ish classes. And I also usually share a story or tidbit from my life that is kind of different than the podcast. And I'll link the podcast too, so you are the first to know when that comes up. All right. I hope you are summering or wintering if you're down under very well. Okay, bye.